Hello everyone and welcome back to Chess Programming Game Design with me. So before we get started with today's actual lesson, I saw that I've got an error in here. Instead of putting this in piece straight away the way we did it last time, you need to actually do it outside of this for each loop. So you just paste it in here and then we can freely delete that. And now we've separated the shading from everything else and we can move on with today's lesson. That was just to fix things that I had done in the last lesson which were wrong. So let's move on. So I think that today what we're going to work on is just basically fixing the errors which we have in the different piece classes. So let's start off with the bishop. We have 4 places where there are errors. There are going to be more once we start fixing and then adding. You will see what I mean, but let's first of all fix this here. So currently we're not looking for squares because we have this list of normal or special move. We can't really look for squares. We have to look for normal or special moves. J invalid moves copy. Then we get another error because, well, this isn't a square and so it won't work. So what we need to do is after each J we just do the valid move and that's going to get the square that is in the current normal or special move. So let's do that for all of the J's that we have in the checking stage. And 2 more. There we go. Good. Then when we remove, it's also going to work fine as we're removing J, where J is normal or special move and the list contains normal or special move. So that can still stay the same, even though beforehand it was an error. Now it's not, as we are just going through normal or special moves. So let's move on to our next error. Also, another thing that I've noticed, and you also might have noticed, is there's a little blue line here. That blue line tells you which line you're typing on. So you can see where the red line is comparative to the line you're typing on. So if the blue line is right on the red line, then you know that you're on the right line where there's an error. Or you can just look through your whole code, which is kind of boring to do, and find wherever there's red underlined. So here what we need to fix is, well, again, we're not working with squares anymore, which means that we have to change square to normal or special move. That's again going to give us some problems, like it did previously. So what we're going to do is, similarly to above, put the valid move here, and the easiest thing to actually do is to start from the end and then work your way in, so that when the line shifts to the right you don't have to chase it. We do the same over here, equals that, and everything should work out fine there as well. And that should be it for the bishop. We might need to come back, but I think that that's fine. We need to do basically the same thing for all of the other pieces, so let's just go through it. I am actually going to go through all of it while recording so that you guys know what I'm doing for sure, because I know that it can be kind of confusing if I just don't record this part as to what I'm doing. So after each J, again, you just add the valid move to get the square which is contained in the special or normal move. Otherwise, it's going to give you an error because you can't compare 2 different things. It's like comparing an integer to a string. They can't be the same unless the first thing you do is convert the string to an integer. We need to do the same here. So let's copy that over. I'm also using my other code as reference just to make sure that I'm doing everything correctly, because I don't want to really make a mistake. And this is also a long line of code, so we will start at the end and work my way back. And yeah, so just adding the valid move to the J's. That should be fine. We have no other errors left. So after we do the pieces, these pieces, then we are going to move on to the game manager, which is also going to have errors and maybe even the square and piece. Although I think that we've already fixed the piece. Yes, we don't have any errors in the piece right now, so we should be fine with that. The valid move. Sometimes I type it in, sometimes I copy it. It depends on what I think is going to be faster. I'm trying to think of some little tricks to give you guys on how to do stuff faster or find things. If you haven't noticed yet, you can do Ctrl F to find something. If you've already selected something and do Ctrl F, it already puts it up there. Just something interesting I thought. And then if you want to replace, you can just press this little arrow button. Okay, that's the rook fixed as well. So let's move on to the knight, which actually isn't going to have any changes because the knight doesn't have any special moves. So we don't need to work with special moves, although we do add them here. But then we don't have any way of specially dealing with those. So we can just leave that as it is. Similarly, the king, we do have the castling move, but because we don't do the way of checking whether something's blocking the king's movement, then we don't have to do that here. So we're fine with that. Black pawn and white pawn are also fine. So that's all of those pieces done. Square, that also seems to be fine. No errors yet. We might have some logic errors, but oh no, we do have some errors, excuse me. So, okay, we are going to fix this through Game Manager. The dot contains this, because it's not going to contain this. The list, the valid moves list, which we now have in Game Manager, isn't a list of squares. Let me just find it. Where was it? What is it referring to? The canvas current piece selection of the, yeah. So it's talking about the pieces list. So this list is no longer a list of squares. It's now a list of normal or special moves. So we can't check whether it contains squares because, well, it's not ever going to contain a square. And that's why it's giving us an error, as you can see there. We could do something like a new, or you might think that you can do this, or special move, and then this to see. Okay, I have mistyped that. I'm going to explain after I've done it. So like this, we've created a new one of these objects, and you would think that if it's the same, then it's going to compare. However, because of how C# works, this isn't going to work the way you would expect it to. So we are going to have to create our own contains method, which I'm going to put in the Game Manager, because that's going to be the easiest place to use it, as we are going to need it in places like this as well. So let's move on to that next. So what I've actually been meaning to say through one of these videos I haven't done yet. So we don't actually need this part. We don't actually need this part that you just saw commented out. This part is completely redundant. This is because, well, if a square is selected, because in our square we've made sure that the square can only be selected if it's a valid move, then if it's selected, then it is going to be inside of the valid moves list. Therefore, we can just delete this straight away. And the only condition that we need here is this. For now, we are going to add on the checking whether the valid move is a special move as well, but for now we don't actually need that. Let's just work with the square where we have the errors now. So to do this, we are going to make a new method. The method is just going to check whether the list contains the element. So instead of using the pre-made .contains, we basically make our own, and I'm making it private because nothing else needs to use it. It's just for the square. Boolean because it returns true or false. That's all we needed for an if statement to do. and then does list contain element is the name of it, and then we need to pass a few things. So the first thing I pass to it is the list of normal or special moves, basically the list which contains the valid moves. And then the square, which I want to check whether it is a valid move inside of this list. So I want to check whether this element is inside of this list, or whether this element is inside of one of the elements of this list, because normal or special moves is a class which contains a square and a boolean. And so what I do, oops, let's go back into square, is for each normal or special move n, you can call it j, it really doesn't matter what you call it, it's just the iterable, well, whatever that's called, the variable which I use to iterate through the list. That's the name for this list that I pass to it. And then if the valid move inside of this n is equal to the element, that means that the element is inside of one of these elements of this list. I return true, and it just exits the method straight away. If it's gone through all of the elements and seen none of that kind of element, then it just returns false, and it doesn't allow you to enter this if statement. So what we need to do then is alter this. Let's just put parentheses around it, just to keep everything consistent and to make sure that it works the way I want it to. No, that parentheses, that bracket needs to stay outside. So we comment this out. We can just delete it later on, but I want it there to make sure that I pass the correct things. So I call this method and I pass it dot valid moves the same way as I've done there, and I pass it this square, and that's going to work now the way we want it to. Similarly here we can just copy and paste this, and that should be fine. I think that I'm just missing one bracket there. Yep, there we go. And now everything should work the way we want it to. Just make sure that we put the brackets there. And good. Oh, and also what I forgot to mention was sometimes you might see that your scene is going to be blank, as you just saw there for a second. That's because you have some errors which don't allow it to be displayed properly. Don't worry too much about it. Once you fix the errors, it just comes back as you saw it do right now. If we press play now, nothing will have changed. We've just made things work in a different way, and we've made sure that we differentiate between special moves and normal moves. We haven't done anything with it yet, but we're working our way towards it. So I think that I'm actually going to end this video here. In the next lesson we are going to work a bit more on the game manager and start looking at how we're going to be dealing with that stuff, because now I'm pretty sure that we've pretty much fixed all of the other pieces and all of the other elements the way we want them to work for quite a long time now, unless we want to make some big changes. And that should be fine. So until next time, please tell me what you liked about this video. Like, share, subscribe, it encourages me to make more videos such as this one. Tell me how I can improve, so that I can improve for the next video and that you enjoy it more. Till next time, once again, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.